happening, everybody? Friday night special show. We never do Friday night shows anymore.
Except last Friday.
Oh, that's right. We did, right?
Yep.
So Rick Barrett reached out to me, and I know Rick is going to be doing a thing called the Martyrs Walk. So, Jason, you are what's going on? To me, what it looks like is you guys are doing basically like a Catholic Tough Mudder. Is that like a good summation of what you guys are trying to pull off?
I don't know, man. A little more meat to that. Yeah, this is a little bit more than just a tough mudder. This is going to bring in some spiritual components, a lot of mental components. We are going to test guys, push guys to their limits, mentally, physically, and spiritually. A little bit different.
So, is it a 1-day event, a 2-day event? How long is this going to be?
It's approximately 2.5 days. Yep, it'll be a 2.5 day event.
So you guys, what state is it actually in?
So we're based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So we will be at Camp Thunderbird, which is in South Carolina, just across the border. And then we'll transport each day to different locales, some in North Carolina, some in South Carolina.
Okay, so let's backtrack. Okay, so this is a 2.5 day event in North Carolina, and so do you guys have like a retreat home you guys are staying in? Is it a hotel you're staying in? Or do you have what's the plan?
Yeah, so right now we are using a YMCA summer camp facility, just getting off the ground. So we use that for our bunkhouse and our base, basically for where we stay and where we eat. Some of the activities will take place there, but most are taking place off campus. It works out for us. It puts all the guys in a place, in a room, dormitory, if you will, to where they can kind of have that brotherhood and that camaraderie while they're going through everything. We looked at doing hotels, felt like that was a little bit too comfortable. Yeah. And so we decided to find something a little bit in between. We thought about doing camping, but thought, the guys are going to be going through a lot. They probably need to get a decent night's sleep. So we found kind of a middle of the road solution.
Is this the first one you guys are doing? Is this the first time you guys putting this together?
So August 24th to the 26th will be our first main event. May 3rd to the 5th was our beta version, where we brought in 6 men, including Rick Barrett, who will be one of our instructors, Daniel Vu with Traditional Catholic Men, and several other guys who have their own specialty in different directions and abilities that can bring benefit to the Martyrs Walk. So those 6 guys went through. They very excited and enthusiastic about bring it forward. And going forward, we want to do it, once a month. That's our goal.
Okay.
Oh wow, you guys are gonna do it.
That's cool.
Yeah. What are you? Okay, so before we even get into like exactly what goes on here, why don't you take us back a little bit and just tell us how long you've been Catholic, how you came to the faith, who you are, how this whole thing came to be. Give us like a little snapshot of who you are.
Sure, absolutely. Born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So Southern Cajun boy, I guess, at heart. Was brought up nominally Catholic. We basically went to church when it was convenient. We prayed for holidays here and there, and it really wasn't something important in our family, in our lives. And probably likely due to that, my parents divorced when I was in 6th grade, and that began just a tornado of events. My sister and I, and really just that just kind of was the beginning of the end, you could say, of or what the enemy would have wanted to say, and just kind of continued to veer off and grow further and further away from the faith into my teens, late teens, early 20s, when I essentially just hit a wall, hit a bottom, was at the point of giving up on everything. There was a lot of abuse in my life, a lot of trauma, and a lot of drugs, alcohol.
Yeah, I have a lot.
Abuse.
I have some experience with that too.
Abuse of pretty much anything that was out there that I could abuse, I guess you could say, people included. And I hit, I guess around 1994, a series of events, including a really bad car accident, a run-in with the law, and pretty much, was at the point of just giving up, just ready to just be done in a real way. And I happened to have one friend around at that point in time in my life, and he was a traditional Catholic. His
in 1994?
1994.
It was a traditional Catholic in 1994. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he, we ran in kind of the same circle. So he was kind of slipping a little bit. I had already slipped. I was gone. Yeah. But he was slipping, and I probably wasn't doing him a favor by being his friend at the time. But when I did hit that wall and hit my bottom, he talked me out of a lot of real bad things I wanted to do. And one day he saw an old crucifix I had hanging on my wall, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were Catholic." And I said, "Well, yeah, I wouldn't go that far." And through a little bit of conversation, he said, "Maybe, what do you think about coming to church?" And at that point in my life, I had nothing positive going on. And I thought, well, I probably can't get in trouble at church. And so I gave in. I went. It was actually a small chapel that was held by the Society of St. Pius X in Charlotte. I had never seen the Latin Mass, didn't know anything about the Latin Mass. I didn't know anything about the faith, really. But I walked into that little chapel, and it changed my life. It was the first time in my life I really had seen anything that, it was just otherworldly. I've said that in so many times that when I've talked about it, it's just otherworldly. And I went that Sunday afterwards. I went every Sunday afterwards, made a general confession, and really just made this huge pendulum swing. Discerned a vocation, ended up in a seminary for a short period of time.
How old were you at this time?
So 94, I was 20. I was born in 74. And when all of this, when I started, kind of swinging back, probably 21, 22 years old, I guess. And
that's young for a conversion, especially to discover tradition. It's like, because I remember my first traditional mass, and it really is. It's like you encounter the transcendent, right? It's jarring.
Yeah,
like it really is. So you're all right. So your life is basically spiraling out of control. Your early 20s, and you encounter the traditional mass, and you go for you discern a vocation. So you ended up in seminary.
I did. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I actually was accepted to the Fraternity of St. Peter. I went first. But I left pretty quickly there, and then I went to the Society of St. Pius X. I stayed there for I stayed in their chapels and pre-seminary for maybe around 2 years, and then I went to their seminary for about 6 months. And then at that point, kind of just realized that that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I kind of went from that full pendulum swing, I suppose, and moved back to Charlotte, took a few classes at the local community college, had a class with my now wife of going on 19 years. First time I looked, eyes fell on her. I knew she was the one. I went home that day that I saw her and told my roommate, I said, "There's something about this girl, Joanne Meadows," because I knew, because she was writing her name. She kept writing her name. I thought it was really cute. But said, "There's something about Joanne Meadows." And sure enough, here we are, 6 kids, 19 years later. Fast forward, after I got out of the seminary, Joanne and I married, and there was still just something lacking. There was
wait, slow down. I have to dig in here a little.
Was she Catholic at the time?
Joanne was not Catholic. No.
What was her faith background?
She was a good Christian, Christian family. Her father was a chaplain in the Navy. He was a chaplain for our sheriff's department, and just an all around, just a good, wholesome Christian family. Yeah. the parents would go every Sunday, and probably more so Joanne. Probably not so much.
How do her parents handle Catholic Jason Murphy coming over to take their daughter out?
Yeah, I mean that I got some cold shoulders for a little while. But I think I might have some converts coming soon. So
get out of here,
nice.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
so your wife now, this is 19 years ago. Your wife is, she's a Bible believing Christian, evangelical flavor, I guess,
Yep.
right?
Baptist. Yeah.
Okay, Baptist. So how do you handle the faith conversation with your soon to be wife before you're married?
Yeah, so that was, I'm an extreme guy, obviously involved with the Martyrs walk. Anybody involved with something like that's got to be a little off. But I was still, on fire. I'd just come out of the seminary. I'd met her that fall, and I tried like heck to bring her to the traditional Latin Mass. I was in the Schola, singing midnight Mass, and I was teaching altar boys how to serve and teaching Latin. So I was deep in it. And that didn't take. That was a tough one for her. The veil.
Women have a hard time. Like my wife, it took months before she finally embraced it, and then when she finally did embrace it, like she's in love with it. But women are it's a very masculine mass.
That's right. Yeah,
and it's shocking to women. Like they don't feel very at home right away. But I think over time they eventually. So okay, so let's hear how this continues.
So I brought her to a few. Probably not as a good a decision bringing her to 2-hour and 3-hour services in Latin in the middle of the night. But I sure
Sleep
gave it a
deprivation.
swing. Yeah. So that didn't really take. We continued to date, and after a while, I guess I really brought up the fact like, hey, I'm gonna need to be married in the Catholic Church, and she basically told me she would never be Catholic, and I said, okay, we're just gonna have to see what happens, and through prayer and just everything else that there. Eventually she showed some interest. She decided to join the RCIA program at our local cathedral in Charlotte, and she went through. I went through with her, to be there while she did it, and she converted, and then we were married in the church, and then she began teaching in a Catholic school. She was a school teacher.
So let me ask you, okay, so I had a similar situation. My wife was Lutheran when we got married. I had to get a dispensation from my bishop. My wife had to agree to let me raise my children Catholic, but she didn't convert before we were married. So we had to go through all this. Like she didn't realize she had to go through all this. So my wife didn't actually have her own conversion of heart until a few years in. So your wife goes through RCIA, but does she believe the Catholic faith, or is she kind of going through the motions for the wedding purpose?
I think she self-admittedly would say that initially it was to kind of go through the motions. Since then, no, she's definitely embraced the Catholic faith, and now she is actually we'll go about 50% of the time to the traditional Latin Mass, and she'll even veil. How about that? So and the kids are coming around. The kids, we talk a lot, and Dad talks a lot, and tries to help them see what's going on, and it's they're aware of things, and I think it's difficult because when everybody's jumping off the cliff, why are the weirdo Murphys not jumping off the cliff? So
how old are your kids?
So my youngest is 2.5, and my oldest is 15.5, and they're boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. So we're alternating. So youngest is a girl, oldest is the boy. We have a 5-year-old, and then 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an almost 12-year-old. So all in between.
Yeah, I look. So Rob's kids are on the younger side. My kids are my oldest is 17, my youngest is 12.
Okay.
these are the years where it's really like the conversations we need to be having with our kids, because the phones are constantly pulling their attention. All their friends are doing whatever they want to do. It's like it's really difficult to make sure, because I know me growing up, my parents took me to church thinking I was picking these things up, and I wasn't. Like, it was, I kind of had a general belief in God, but I had no actual catechesis. So it's really tough as parents to make sure that you instill the faith as parents into your children. So, okay. So your wife eventually winds up teaching in the church and things like that. Now, before we get to how the whole Tough Mudder started, we have to actually play a commercial for Spiritus TV that Rick Barrett does the voiceover work for. So Rob, why don't you throw that on real quick?
Are you tired of searching YouTube for something that won't make you run to confession? Let's talk about the Catholic video alternative platform, Spiritus TV. Spiritus TV is the only video platform that is guided by Catholic morality. That means you will not have to worry about the influences of modernity on you and your family. In a time where YouTube is promoting whatever flavor of the month degeneracy, and all these supposed alternatives are the same thing with a different coat of paint, Spiritus TV is here for you, your family, and the faith. Check us out at spiritustv.com. That is spiritustv.com.
I noticed Rick, or it probably wasn't Rick, but whoever did that got plenty of Rick's videos on the screenshot, but none of ours. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that. None of our videos are in there.
No, just Rick.
Okay, so Jason, now at what point do you start getting involved with thinking that you want to do something to get men called a little bit to a higher purpose here?
Sure. Yeah. So that's kind of where we'll detour back. After getting married, that there was still that longing, I guess, just having that formation, which I'm eternally grateful for. Obviously finding the Latin Mass, and really, which helped me to understand my faith in such a, deep way. And then of course the years that I spent in discernment, that was just, beautiful. I can't even put into words how important that is to my faith walk and to where I am and who I am. But there was a longing there, I guess, as a man. I just felt, I missed that brotherhood, the other seminarians, the being around the priest. And so I ended up by chance linking up with the Knights of Columbus. And so when I first found out about the Knights of Columbus, I kind of was, I don't want, don't want anything to do with the Knights of Columbus. They're a bunch of old guys that hand out Tootsie Rolls.
That's the problem. It's like yeah. I'm going to join the Knights of Columbus. I'll be the only guy there under 78. And I'm not selling car insurance.
And you're not a spring chicken either, Ant.
And so I said, okay, I'll check it out. And I went, and honestly, that was around 2004, 2005. They were still having actual ceremonies for their degrees, and it was done really well by the men who did the degrees for me, and it really just it kind of gave me a little bit of hope that, okay, well, there are men out here who've taken their faith serious, because really it's just hard, man. It's just hard to find other guys that are living the faith, and so they were a lot older than I was at that time. I was 30 years old, and the youngest by 30 years. But I was inspired by them, and through that, I started saying, well, let's change this. Let's get some young guys in here, because I could see what it was really about. I could see through the old guys, the Tootsie Rolls and the feathered hats. I could see really that it was a good organization in its foundation. And so I worked really hard and ended up working through some of the officer positions and recruiting a lot of younger guys. And through that, in 2010, we founded the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. And so that was a really important piece of my walk, because it really brought, when we were bringing 500, 700 guys a year to these conferences. And it really just, it was a really important part. And unfortunately, we started having kids at that point in time. I guess we had one in 2010, but by the next couple of years, we were 2, 3, 4, 5, and I kind of got pulled away and kind of got out of it. And then back in 2019, I was approached to get back in, and my life had settled down a little bit. The kids had grown up a little, and I was able to get back involved. And I immediately said yes. and kind of took the reins back over. And in many ways, I think I did it because I needed it.
Yeah.
I needed the accountability, and I was at a point where I was probably not really getting that. And so that really helped me,
what's your career?
hold myself accountable and have other guys holding me accountable.
What do you do for a living?
Residential development, construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to get out.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do construction.
Been doing it for almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I do road paving, like roadway paving work in Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx. It's not fun. So okay. So you get back in with these guys.
Yep.
And this is around 2019. You said, right?
So got back in with the men's conference 2019. All of these things are very important and a big part of the Martyrs walk. And so through the men's conference, I was contacted by the Carolina Catholic Media Network, and they wanted to do some cross promotion with the conference and the radio station because it was new. It was kind of just getting off the ground as well. So I said, sure. I don't know about AM radio. I don't know who listens to AM radio. And he said EWTN, and I got a little more nervous because I'm like, yeah. Men and EWTN, they just, God bless Mother Angelica for what she's done. But if you're trying to get the attention of men, the very holy and sweet nuns chanting the Chaplet of Mercy are not going to get the men's attention.
Yeah.
But I said, okay. And through that, I started doing some little reflections on the radio. And then eventually he said, well, why don't you do, what do you think about doing a men's show on the radio station? And I don't know. I said, I don't know about that. But I thought about it, prayed about it. And, 2 years ago, we started the Obligation radio show on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. And through that, I guess, is when I really started to meet a lot of other guys that were actually out there doing the grind. It wasn't necessarily through the radio show, but I wanted to get some attention. So, for the show. So I got an Instagram, and I had never had Instagram before. And we started putting some info out there for the men's conference and for the radio show. And through that, I started to meet up with some like-minded men. And, as silly as it sounds, through social media, Rick Barrett included, and Daniel Vu, and Cuban-American Catholic, Tico Valerio, and Sons of Mary. I mean, just all these guys,
Let me slow you down for a sec. Okay, so you start this radio show. Are you on air alone, or do you have a partner that you're doing it with? How did that go?
For the first 6 months, I did it with a partner, John Eads, who was a friend of mine for a few years, and then he moved on. But for the past year and a half, I've been doing it myself, and it's mostly interviews. So I'll have guys on, mostly men, telling their conversion, reversion story, because I firm believer, in hearing that and getting word out about that, because through that, when you help to change someone else, you help change yourself. And I know from my story, there's a ton of other guys out there who've done the same.
How nervous were you that first show?
Very.
I always say this because I recently went back and watched a few of my earlier episodes, and this is before Rob joined the channel. And it is so humiliating to go back and watch those early shows. It's like, I cannot believe I let this go up on air.
I should re-premiere one of those one of these days, just for fun.
Nice. First off, when I first started, I had an accident at work, and my tooth was chipped, so it looks like I look like a hick. I have a chipped tooth in the beginning. It was so bad.
Trust me, no one's gonna confuse you for a hick or redneck Anthony. Not as soon as they hear your voice.
But it was so bad. I had a lisp because I had a chipped tooth. It was so bad. But those early shows are so uncomfortable until you get comfortable in your skin. And that's why I asked that. But if you have a partner, it really does make it easier. So I guess if you had somebody to talk to back and forth on those early days. So
that certainly helped. So then continued that. And, through that, I would say, that Traditiones Custodes was a big player in really kind of starting to pay attention again, I guess. I had not been to the traditional Latin Mass in a few years prior to that. except for a couple of funerals here and there. And I guess when that happened, I've really started to look and pay more attention. I think I got comfortable with life, comfortable with the faith. And you know what happens, we get comfortable and we think we're at a good place, but if we're not moving forward, we're moving back. And I guess I really started to just re-examine how serious I was taking my faith. And I know that was sort of a milestone, because at that point, there was a lot of angst. And I guess it hit me personally, because the traditional Latin Mass, even though I hadn't been on a regular basis in many years, it's what brought me. It's what I'm alive. It's why I'm alive and breathing today. And so I guess I really, got re-engaged there. And
I want to touch on that for a second, because Agrarian Peasant says the same thing too, right? TC woke me up. Okay. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for Francis, I would never have found the traditional Mass. So you found it earlier on. Yeah. I found it because of Francis. Yeah. I think Rob found it because of Francis. Then Traditionis Custodes comes down. And when you hear they're going to take it away, you come back to it. Like, people really have to understand that God sends these chastisements to wake his faithful up, right? Yeah, like these little things come to wake us up, because, hey guys, you're not even paying attention. Like, look at what you're about to lose. And it's really important that as upset as everybody gets, you really have to see past the anger and past the emotions, and really look at the blessings that come when Francis cracks down on us. It wakes people up, it drives people to these traditional practices, and it really puts a little bit of a fire under the traditional movements. But
it's a great point. Absolutely. So, yeah. I've got a friend who says that Francis is actually secretly a traditionalist, because he's done so much good for the traditional movement.
He really has. I mean, especially during COVID, right? The priests shut the sacraments down during COVID, and people were like, what is going on? They saw what people were doing, receiving in the hand with masks on. I'm sure tons of people saw the hosts hitting the ground. So people started to seek out traditional communities where things were treated with reverence. And it really, COVID is what made a lot of parishes explode. So even the chastisement of COVID is a loving father chastising his children, calling them back to him. So, how did you do during COVID? Were you so you came back? Traditionis Custodes was after COVID, right?
Yes, that was 2021, okay. I believe. So it was the year after. Yeah.
Okay, so now when TC comes out, that reinvigorates your desire to go back to the traditional Mass again.
It did, yeah.
And then how do you go from there now?
Yeah, so through that, I guess, I really started helping others. I don't know. I probably, I'm an extreme guy, so I probably went a little too much, into Francis, when it kind of, but I don't want to say just into Francis. I think just into the church as a whole, just to let people be aware of what tradition really is, because no one even knew. They would just say, oh, the traditional Latin Mass, it's in Latin, it's long, it's a bunch of extremists. No one even really knew what it was. And again, a almost atheist, suicidal drug addict, for the most part, walks in, and by the grace of God, finds his faith and goes every Sunday afterwards. I mean, I know I'm subjective here, but if you're looking at it from an objective point of view, that's a miracle. I mean, it's a true miracle that God, used that to help me find my faith. And so I guess through that, I began, being more involved on social media. Not that I like being there, but I think we use it. We Catholicize, that which is used against us by the enemy, and we use it for good. And that's our Lord does the same thing. He writes straight with crooked lines. And I began meeting a bunch of like-minded men, and it just kind of reinvigorated me, because I just was kind of hitting that same place that I was when I first got married, and just couldn't find other guys, and the nights kind of supplied that in a smaller way, whereas now guys that are getting up and praying the rosary. Cesar Vasquez, Sons of Mary on Instagram, he gets up every single morning 5:30 to pray the rosary. I was heading offshore fishing one day, and I could get up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, go offshore fishing. But, am I going to get up and say the rosary at 5:30 or,
Yeah.
or go to Matt? No. And I saw that one day and it inspired me. And that was last fall. And I've been doing that ever since. And I was a guy who couldn't get up before 7:30 or 8 because it was just too hard. And I wasn't cut out that way.
You see how God like works in increments in our lives, right? Like he gave you this drastic conversion in 94 because he knew it, you needed it to save your life. But you can see having kids, the roller coaster of life comes, maybe the desire to, all right, maybe I have to stay so traditional kind of fades. Your wife feels more comfortable to Novus Ordo, so you go there.
Sure.
These things, life happens and we start to get dulled a little bit. And then something powerful happens. Francis takes away the traditional mass on us. COVID hits. All these things happen. I mean, it was during the summer of shame that I came to tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's a fake sex summit. They're pretending that they're going to be repentant, and instead they go and they tell us that, oh yeah, we're just going to justify adult same-sex relationship. It was such a sham, that whole thing. They have Pachamama happens, but through all of that, I have the traditional mass keeping me stable.
Absolutely.
You're coming back to it now. You're seeing new life come into you. It really is amazing how God works in these incremental steps in everybody's life and gives you that jolt right when you need it.
Absolutely. So, I, through that, I guess, through the 2021, just kind of that reawakening, I guess you could say, just that, reawakening and, starting to really, want to push more. And that's, I like adventure. I like a challenge. So, that's when I kind of, started feeling like I was just kind of complacent. I had been, I had a 20-year, company I've been doing, with residential real estate and construction, and I had done really well, and I just was starting to get, kind of fat and lazy, and through that little cycle of events, it kind of just gave me a kick in the butt and woke me up like, hey, you were cut out for more, you're made for more, and so I guess that brings us to where, kind of how the Martyrs Walk really, got started, and I had seen on Instagram or maybe even, Facebook that they had these kind of these boot camp kind of things out there. And I looked at it and thought, well, that's interesting. And I thought, well, let me just look out there and see if there's anything that's Catholic that's doing what they're doing. And I really couldn't find anything to that capacity. And so that was kind of prompted me, like, what, that's that, because I was wanting to kind of pivot out of real estate construction. I was just ready. I wanted something more purposeful. I had made, good money. I'd, had a lot of time, and I was ready to, take that time, talent, and treasure that God had given me and try to find something with more purpose. And so I thought, okay, well, that's where I want to go with it. I want to, establish this, put men through kind of this intense boot camp. I didn't know how, and I don't know why, what it was going to look like or anything like that. But I decided to go and do one, and it was a Christian organization out of Texas. And so I said, well, if I'm going to do something like that, that's going to be Catholic, let me go look and just see from a perspective, from other guys, and just see what, how they do it. And
the only one I know of is the King's Walk, right?
So this one was called Rise Up King. So they're very similar. I went and it was good. There was nothing that was anti-Catholic. It was very, very, very well done. The problem is most of these kind of revolve around this prosperity gospel kind of mentality.
The King's Walk is specifically Catholic. That I know. They have a Catholic priest come. They do mass. They do camping though. They're not doing what you're talking about.
Yes,
it's really just a camping trip, but they take you to like a beautiful national park. Like they do one at Yellowstone. They do one at a park in Pennsylvania. They travel around the country and they do a few of them a year. But I don't know any Catholic organization that's doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So I went down to see and through it. It was tough. I mean, they put us through some really rigorous, trials and activities. And I knew, I was very open before I went down. I was like, God, I know I'm on this path, and I was just open to see. And in the last day, we were going to what we all knew was going to be a really difficult challenge, physical, There wasn't really any spiritual there with it, but it was going to be physically challenged, very, very difficult. And we were blindfolded, being transported to this location. And I had this, I don't know, I say revelation, and I don't want to sound, kooky, like, anyone appeared.
Revelation doesn't always mean you saw something. Revelation is just something comes into you from above.
And so I'm blindfolded. I'm in this van with like 10 other guys, and it just hits me that what if I was blindfolded, being taken somewhere I didn't want to go, and I was going to be forced to deny Christ. And I was kidnapped, and I was going to be a martyr. I mean, what if that really happened? And I entered into it. I really entered into that. And I've never in my life been able to rise above what my body was telling me, when my body was telling me to stop, and you couldn't do it. You're too cold. You're too weak. You're too tired. I've never been in a situation like that, because when we hit that sand at that beach where we had to do what we were going to do, I was a man possessed, and I possessed by the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
But I wasn't gonna stop, because if I stopped in my head at that moment, I was going to be denying Christ, because what they were trying to do was to push me to deny Christ. Now, there was nothing like that was talked about or anything, but that was what was going on inside of me. And that's when I knew that's what I want to do. I want to take a man to the brink. I want him to be essentially think he's being taken to his death. And does he have what it's going to take to have the fortitude to not deny Christ if it comes, and I don't mean just a blood martyrdom. I mean the white martyrdoms. I mean the daily martyrdoms. When the thing pops up on the computer screen, and that's going to lead you, that little thing on that computer screen that could destroy your marriage, that could take away your kids, or that sharp word, you could lose your job over that word one day. Those things, or that word to your wife that she may never be able to get over, because those martyrdoms, being able to restrain yourself, because if you can't die to yourself in the daily martyrdoms that we face every single day, there is no way you're going to have what it takes to die as a blood martyr if it should come.
Okay, so now this martyr's walk makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a little worked up there, man.
No,
That was good.
Listen to me.
Good.
That's amazing. You're making me want to go now, especially because we've been talking a lot about watching a lot of these sports players make a pinch of incense to Caesar when they're caving into the rainbow stuff, right?
Yep.
And you saw with the whole thing with Dodger Stadium, with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, that these ball players came out, they said something, oh, this is bad, and then the next day they're out there going, I'm sorry, I have a lot to learn from the LGBT. Like, these men denied Christ, in my opinion. I mean, I maybe not flat out, but to not be able to stand up to something like that, these are the things you're talking about, man. And I really do think we're going to be coming up. And you're right about the white martyrdom of daily life, dying to yourself on a daily thing. But I think that we're going to be facing real martyrdom very soon.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what you're talking about is really preparing men for the things that are coming down the pike. And if we don't ever get to that point, then yes, it's to deny yourself the opening the computer screen, it's to deny yourself the, I'm sorry,
you can't be too prepared. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no. So okay, so you guys set this up. Now, do you guys have priests? Do you guys make it a spiritual thing? Do you is it just physical? How is it a spiritual retreat? What's the scope of the weekend?
So it is, I mean, in a nutshell, it's an Ignatian retreat smashed together with a special forces boot camp. It is all encompassing of the spiritual realm. It is not just the physical. I mean, everything that we do is united with something spiritual. Every exercise, every lesson has something to do with death, judgment, heaven, and hell. The four last things,
Wow.
the main principles. the Roman martyrology is a really big component of what we do. It's read every single day. It's very important that the men know and hear the names that the majority of Catholics have no clue who they are and what they've lived for, what they've died for. And so the Roman martyrology is a part of it. There's some opportunity for spiritual guidance. We did have a priest who was there for confession. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Because of an Ignatian retreat, I've been on many Ignatian retreats, and they're great. They're phenomenal, especially the ones in silence. And silence is a very big, important, part of the Martyr's Walk as well. But I'll tell you what the problem is, and maybe I've made it to be much of a problem. But I want to have mass. We did have confessions. I would like to have mass, but I'm going to have a problem because I have a lot of traditional Catholic guys that are interested. And I'm going to have a lot of Novus Ordo Catholic guys, and those are probably the guys more that we need to be reaching anyway, in a sense. So now, if I spring a TLM on a Novus Ordo Catholic, more than likely they're not going to freak out. They're probably going to be amazed and be like, "Wow, that's beautiful." Most of them would. I would say that. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you have a traditional Catholic there and you spring a Novus Ordo on them, that is going to be a problem. And it's a little unfortunate, but I get it. And so that's kind of a sticky point I'm at right now to try to figure that whole component out.
I think you should try to find a traditional priest. If you can't, you might, even if you get a Novus Ordo priest, at least see if you could do it for confession like you did the last time. Because even if you don't have mass, let's put it this way. I went on a Cursillo early on in my faith, and it was, I left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm not going to lie. And you're not supposed to talk about the Cursillo. Like, you're just supposed to set someone up to go on it. I would never send somebody on one. Like, it was a very emotional based experience. It was a lot of like new agey stuff mixed in there. So I wasn't crazy about it, but I also had one of the most powerful confessions of my entire life on that retreat. So even if you can't have mass, if there's an opportunity to maybe get a priest there, just because these men are going to be going through this spiritual journey with you. And sometimes things come up.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes things come up from your past, and you really start facing some of the things that you did. And it might be a good idea to just see if you at least, because I don't know any, even SSPX guys that wouldn't go to confession at a Novus Ordo priest. I mean, unless you're talking about Sede Vacantis, which
sure. And that's the important part, death, judgment, heaven, and hell. If you're on an Ignatian retreat, I mean, a general confession that's made during the Ignatian retreat is so powerful and important, and that is part of what we're doing. So that's a component I think that we certainly will maintain. Trying to figure out the other side of that. I think we'll know when we get there, I think. But as of right now, we do not have mass, but we do have confession.
Yeah, so I would say that's at minimum, just have that. It is hard to it is a weird spot to be in these days, right? Like, a lot of us, like, I will still attend the Novus Ordo Mass. Rob will still attend the Novus Ordo Mass, but I understand why some people are uncomfortable with it. It's a weird time we're in right now, where people that find tradition are very staunch traditionalists, and it's like there's a fine line between going overboard, so it's you have to be careful. But if you could get a priest for confession, I know, especially on that Cursillo, I mean, you're talking about things from my childhood came up that I'm so glad I got the opportunity to confess, because I may have forgotten them. And I saw some of the videos you guys put up from the beta run. Like, it's no joke, some of the things you guys were doing. I saw even the preparation. You guys were digging post holes and things like that. Like, that's what gave me the impression that it was kind of, I thought it was maybe like a Catholic Tough Mudder, but you're saying you're doing the spiritual exercises. You guys are going to be doing real prayer, and you guys are actually going to be doing all these things. But the whole thing you led up with the being blindfolded and led like you're going to martyrdom, it's like, I don't think enough of us meditate on how we would handle something like that.
It's intense. I mean, I had 2 Marines on there, and they said it was right up there with the Crucible. And I'm not a military guy, so that was a nice little feather in my cap. So I was kind of proud that we were up there on that. and because it was more than the physical, you know. And of course, you know, the Marines, there's a lot of mental component there and physical, but when you bring in the spiritual, you know, when you introduce the spiritual realities, it's a different game. It's a completely different game.
Yeah, I think a lot of us just think, oh yeah, I'll stand up to that, I'll be fine, I don't think people have any clue how scary that would be, being marched somewhere blindfolded and being told, spit on this picture of Jesus Christ, deny your God. And really, really, like, you know, thinking about that. Now, I think for a lot of men, I think like the idea of me facing martyrdom is one thing. The idea of my family facing martyrdom and then telling me either deny your God or your family will be something will happen to. That's one that I have a really hard time.
Yeah, man, that's big.
So, but okay. So, how did it go with the beta run?
The beta was great. I mean, it was. I think.
How many guys did you have?
I'm sorry?
How many guys were there for the beta?
Six. So I basically led those 6 guys. I had 2 guys that were just kind of assisting me, but I kind of led them on that so they would know. You know, I had been on one, although it not being the Martyrs walk, so I had kind of been through a semblance of that, and they all agreed that I should probably lead them through so that whenever because I want them to be I want to be involved, but I want to try to, organize this and have guys, really leading this. And I, the ones that I chose, they're all have very specific skill sets and personalities that are going to bring a lot. And in order for them to be able to give it, they've got to understand what they're giving. And I think going through it, they certainly now know, what we're trying to accomplish.
How many guys do you have signed up for the main event so far?
So we're still a ways out. So they're just starting to trickle in now. So we've got a handful. But just my experience with the men's conference, we get 80% of the guys to sign up about 2 to 3 weeks before the actual
Well, that's
event.
why we wanted to get you on, because we want to start getting the word out for this.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is months away, right? We're going August 24th, you said?
That's right. Yep.
August 24th. So I'll be honest with you, North Carolina, we should really, what you have to do is, like, if anybody listening, even whether you're listening live or listening later on, you got to get a couple of your friends to go together. You got to get 3 guys and 3 of your friends go together, and then you go and have a bonding experience with 3 of your friends, and you go and meet a group of guys. It's like these men's groups that you do. I mean, we did a stupid trip to Steubenville, and we met up with 5 or 6 friends. They're memories you make for the time of your life. Like, you'll never forget those memories. You guys get, it's no women around. You guys really get to just be men and have real conversations. And sometimes, especially on these retreats, tears get shed, man. Like, you guys, tears get shed.
We have a mental health specialist that is one of our instructors, Cesar Vasquez. He's been 10 years with New York State Mental Health. Specializing with addiction and anxiety disorders, and guys are going to come and they're going to experience that. It's going to come out because we're going to peel the onion back. We're going to bring out, that's what we want. What is holding you back? What is there?
So Rick, I'm going to actually try and come. I have to work this out with my wife because I'm doing Chicago. We're doing Pennsylvania. I'm like, my wife might kill me if I do another trip, but I think I have to.
Can you go a weekend without your vape, Anthony?
Yeah, I could do it. Maybe.
No caffeine, no vaping, no tobacco, no alcohol.
That's a hard weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a great experience. I think I saw a question.
What's the limit of how many guys can go?
Yeah, so it's our patrons are the 40 holy martyrs. So we'd like to limit it to 40 for each event. That may sound ambitious, but that's our goal. That's probably our cap. We'll cap it at 40. We want to do it month over month. The Christians are doing it month over month. Really? We want to do it month over month. And
what kind of a turnout do they get? Like, you're going to do this year round, or maybe just the summer months?
I want to do it every month because I want to be able to offer father-son events. I want to be able to offer youth events under 18. I want to be able to offer combat specialized events where it's focused on hand-to-hand combat, because there is some combat stuff there. I want to have a weaponry specialty event. Rick Barrett, Armed Catholic, shout out there. He's one of our leaders, and down the road we could see having some of these specialized categories so that men could come. Now, it's not intended for a guy to come September and then turn around and come, August, or come August and come September.
It's intended for the guy who goes in August to tell people about it, and
That's
they
right.
want to go to the August, September one and October one. Because I think once this thing catches on, I think it's going to. I think it's going to be like one of those retreats where it's like you have to go on this, dude.
And it's not a one and done. It's not a one and done. You are entering a fraternity. You are entering a brotherhood. And we also have John Hughes, and he was one of the founders of the Queen of Martyrs Templars. And the Queen of Martyrs Templars has established a rule, kind of a rule of life based on the Templars, based on Third Order Dominicans. And it's a strict way of life that we all adhere to, all of the Martyrs Walk guys. And, no one's going to do it perfect. I don't do it perfect. Maybe some of the guys might do it perfect, but it has to do with diet, exercise, prayer, fellowship. And so we don't want them to come and have this amazing adrenaline pumping spiritual experience and then go home. And I guarantee in 3 weeks, the enemy's coming, man. If you came and got ready for this, he's all over you, and it's going to be over. It's going to dissipate real fast. So
I would like to go for the fraternity of it, man. I love doing things with men, like just getting men together to go and just no women around, and we just get to the. Like it's just such a healthy thing to do. Like I love doing a fishing weekend with my brothers. I like going on a camping weekend. We're going to Pennsylvania to go to the Padre Pio Shrine in September. It's good to do things with other men I feel like today's men don't understand the importance of fraternity. I just watched Band of Brothers, and absolutely. To see the bond those men made by being in war together. Like what you're talking about is going to war for a weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where real, like healthy bonds between men are forged, right? It's like there's nothing unhealthy, nothing awkward. It's like this is when you go into a martyrdom like this, or when you go into a war together as brothers in arms, basically, that's where real fraternity is forged. I think this is going to be one of the most important things that comes about in the Catholic. It's
meant to create, in a compressed time period, a muscle memory, like a sting of conscience, so that when those things happen, like you won't know unless you go. And I don't mean to the Martyrs Walk, but I mean if you're not ever tested and you're never pushed, and you don't ever have to find a way out of a situation. You're never going to know. I mean, if a child is always told never to touch the stove, they're never going to know it's hot. You're never going to know that you're capable of much more until you're pushed to your absolute limit. The human mind thinks it's dying at 40%. We're going to go as close to that 100% as we can without killing you or permanently injuring you, but we're going to push you there. Because most guys are just like, are so far away from what they're capable of, myself included. All of the guys that were there, every one of them tell you, man, I did not know I was capable of that.
This would be a good one to take my son to. My son's 17, and I think it would be a good one to bring him with me to. I think I'm going to really try and figure out how to get down there, because look, like we talk about, like your life is supposed to be fast feast as a Catholic. We're supposed to be doing little mortifications, little penances. Those little penances are supposed to prepare you for when something severe happens. You're talking about boot camp, like penitential boot camp. That's what it's going to be for a weekend. Like I really want to go to this.
I've got Joe Enders and Ronan Torrance. I've already told them their ticket's punched. They just need to get to Charlotte, and I'll tell you the same thing, Anthony. And Rob, you want to come? We'll save you a spot. You just get here. Yeah,
might have to consider that.
I got Enoch coming up next week. I know he's on here. He was watching, so I got bullseye on him as well. What he say?
Jason, you think you will start different chapters in different locations, all happening at the same time, or do you think it's going to stay local to North Carolina?
Man, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. God is running the show. He is driving the bus. I'm just sitting here, and this is not something I thought I'd be doing.
Isn't it wild when God kind of just puts something on your heart, right? It's so. I'm telling you, we started even doing what we're doing, and it started off as a goofy trivia show, and it wasn't until like 2 months ago God started putting like something heavier on my heart and trying to tell me to like, you need to go a little bit deeper. You need to start going a little bit deeper. And it's a strange thing when you feel like God's pushing you to go outside of your comfort zone.
It's yeah, this is not me. And I've said, you know, I've made a lot of money in real estate construction. This is the first business I've ever started that my bottom line, it is men. Every single man. That is my exponent. That is what we are after. So we're doing everything we can. These other these are not walks, these other boot camps and stuff. I mean, you can look them up. They run $5,000 an event to $15,000 an event. You know, for these, you know, intense ones here. And we're trying to keep this thing as low as possible at cost to get guys there. It's still, you know, it's an investment. You know, it is an investment.
How much is it for the weekend?
It's $1,750. So it's an investment, but you know, we have a team of professionals that are going to be there leading. We provide shelter and food and all the activities that are going on there, transportation, everything that's there. So we have cut as much as we can to keep it. But I mean, the one I did in Dallas was $5,500, excluding food, room, and board.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's a big nut. So it's per person though, right? $1,750 per person.
It is, but groups of 3 or more, we can do $1,500. That's what we're trying to do, so we can, you know, bring guys in, you know, get more guys in there for sure.
Okay. All right. So we're going to be pushing this a lot as it's approaching. So I'm trying to think of how because Rob, I want to not forget to keep reminding people about this. Jason, we'll set it up that you come back on again as it gets closer to the event, because I think first off, you amped me up. You made me want to get this thing going. It's like, but as it comes closer, we'll definitely get you back on again. You had an awesome story, man. I love hearing.
If you can get me a video file, I can upload it and play it, and you know, during our shows too. So.
Oh no, nice.
Yeah, some of those video
we got a great one that Rick did. So you guys have Rick's voice on the other one. We got a good one Rick did, so we can just upload that one as well. So yeah, for sure.
Should we play one of their videos right now, Ant?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got one ready to go.
Nice.
Go ahead. What I do, Rob? Fix that.
Anthony.
Fix that. I meant to type something to
here we go.
To Brandon. Sorry.
That looks intense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy just looking at it. Me, myself included. Every time I watch those videos, I'm like, dang,
this is right.
This is really.
I follow you on Instagram, so I see them quite often. They're like, they're pretty intense, but they look great, man. Like I really want to see if we could get a group of guys to go down there. We have to figure this out because we have so many. Like I'm doing Chicago in 2 weeks, and we have the trip at the end of September. So I'm gonna have to see if we can figure this out. But we're definitely gonna get you back on, Jason. Jason, you were I mean, I don't know if anybody else could sell it better than you did, man. You definitely made it sound very, very exciting.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
How can people get in touch with you? How can people sign up for it?
Yeah. So you can go to themartyrswalk.com. A ton of information. out there. And if you're interested, we've actually got an application you can fill out online, and then we'll schedule a personal phone call interview because we want to go over things with guys. We want to make sure that they don't think this is a tough mutter, that they're going to come and just run through it. This is very different, and they need to be ready and prepared for it. It is not a challenge. It's not a race. The only competition is against oneself. But
I was going to say, is there a base fitness level one needs to be at to not physically die, or
we're going to push every man to his own threshold. So there is not like a play. We had guys at different different places physically, and we're just going to hold them accountable and push them to what they are capable of, each individual. And we had guys ranging from, I think, maybe 53 down to, I guess, 26 to 30. So we had a good range. We ideally, we're between 18 and 60. If guys are a little over that and they feel like they're capable, then we're gonna bring as many men as we can in there.
And at this point, like, is it limited to adults for like legal or insurance purposes, or?
Right now, we want to focus on the men, because the men is where it's at. The men is where the problem is. The men is where the attack on the domestic church is, and the men are who need to wake up. And so, we want to focus right now. We want to get a good base with our men from, like I said, 18 to 60. I've got 3 nephews. They're, I think, 19, 21, and maybe 22 or 23. They're interested, and I'm going to bring them. But I told them, I said, there's not going to be any preferential treatment, and you won't be anywhere near your brother. So,
see, I think that even if you got them to do it, like, that's such a good thing to put young men through.
I mean, it beats the crap out of doing like silly focus stuff, right? I mean,
it's
you
think about all the terrible programs our parents put us in growing up. Like, if you get a guy that's 19, 20, and he's going through something like Jason went through when he was 19 or 20, I mean, this is a life-changing opportunity. So if you guys know somebody that's in that situation, try to start pressuring them. Maybe if you know somebody that's struggling right now, go with them. Grab a guy and go with them. Plan it together. If you have a brother who you're on the outs in a relationship with, that'll be a weekend where you can repair your relationship with your brother or something like that. So
and you'll find a bunch of new brothers.
Yeah, this was great. So send us that video file. We'll try to play it every so often, and then we'll pick a date to bring you back on as the event gets closer. Hopefully our channel will be bigger then, and more people have some exposure to it too. We'll start spreading the word, and we'll keep mentioning it throughout the next few weeks.
Appreciate it, guys. Really do.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Jason. Rob, you want to take us out?
Sure thing.
This goes out to all you men out there who are inclined to submit yourself to the lowest faculties in the most pathetic manner. You effeminate man think you were created in order to consume endless amount of pleasure without any consequences? Put your damn video games and smartphones down and pick up something heavy. Do something arduous for once. Pray daily. Submit yourself under the interior discipline. Learn a trade. Buy some land. Get married and have lots of kids so that may you one day raise a generation of virtuous warriors. Learn the rules of the retrograde. Done with y'all.